If your avoidant ex has moved on with someone new, here's the truth you came for. That new person isn't your replacement. They're the room your ex walked into to avoid the version of love that had started becoming real with you. That's why, at first glance, they look happier. Not because the new person is better, because the new person is easier. And easier is a thing you can mistake for better, right up until you understand the difference, which is the entire reason this file exists. But we don't stop at the surface tonight, because telling you the rebound is a distraction only answers the question you're brave enough to say out loud. It doesn't touch the one burning underneath it, the one you're actually asking when you see the photo, when you check the timeline, when your chest tightens around a name you didn't know existed a month ago. Were you easy to erase? Were the parts of you that loved deeply, remembered everything, tried to repair, stayed loyal, and kept showing up the very parts that made you disposable? And what happens when the easy person, the low-pressure person, the clean slate person, stops being a fresh escape and starts feeling thin? That's the case we're opening, because your panic is reading this new relationship as a verdict. It's telling you they found someone better. It's telling you that you were too intense, too emotional, too attentive, too much. It's taking every quality that made you capable of real love and entering it into evidence against you. So tonight, we put the evidence back where it belongs. We look at what their moving on actually proves, what it only appears to prove, and why the qualities you were taught to apologize for are the exact qualities that make you difficult to replace. Let me start with what you already know so you understand I'm not here to flatter you out of the truth. You're not really asking whether they're seeing someone new. You've seen. You've done the maths on the timeline. You've studied the photo long enough to know the angle, the caption, the relaxed version of them that seemed to disappear with you near the end. What you're actually asking is whether you mattered, whether the version of you that tried, waited, remembered, forgave, reached, and kept the door open got written over by someone who simply arrived. And I know the body that asked that question, the stomach drop, the heat climbing the neck, the pulse behind the eyes, the pull to check again, compare again, gather fresh proof of your own replacement at 1 in the morning when no good answer has ever once arrived at that hour. That isn't weakness. That's a real bond reacting to a sudden loss of safety. You built something. Of course, losing it sets off every alarm you have, so I won't tell you to stop feeling it. I'm going to show you why almost everything that feeling concludes is wrong, one piece of evidence at a time. If this is naming something you've been circling for weeks, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and comment this. What's the part you secretly hope they remember about you? Your loyalty, your depth, your patience, your warmth, or the way you actually saw them? You're never the only one in that comment section. So here's the first piece of evidence, the speed. You saw them with someone new days, weeks, barely any real time after it ended. No visible grief, no pause, no empty stretch where you assumed your relationship would at least be felt before anyone else walked in. And the speed went into you like a sentence handed down. I was forgotten, I was never loved, I was replaced before I'd even stopped crying. But watch what speed actually measures, because it isn't what your fear thinks. It doesn't measure your worth. It measures their tolerance for emotional discomfort. People who can sit with loss slow down after a breakup. They feel the absence. They turn the relationship over in their hands. They face the empty room and let it stay empty for a while. Your avoidant ex reached for the exit instead, and the exit had a face, a name, a clean slate, a person who didn't yet know where anything was buried, who asked nothing of them yet, which made the whole thing feel, for a while, like oxygen. This is where people lose months, so stay with me. The mistake is treating their speed as a measurement of how little you meant. Speed is the evidence that they couldn't stand still long enough to feel what they'd lost. You don't watch someone sprinting from grief and conclude the thing behind them was worthless. You conclude they're terrified of standing still. So here's the first line for the file, and we'll keep building these as we go. The speed proves they needed relief. It does not prove you are forgettable. Those are two different findings, and your panic has been filing them under the same word. Now keep your eyes on the file, because the speed was only the first mark on the timeline. The second piece of evidence is one you collected long before the new person existed. The relationship had already shown you the pattern, the warmth that came close and then withdrew without warning. The night they opened up and then went quiet for days, as though vulnerability had to be punished with distance. The future they described with real feeling and then refused to build towards. The way they acted entirely normal after a rupture, as if the argument that kept you awake all night had simply evaporated. You felt the temperature drop in real time. You know the exact sensation of reaching for someone who was physically in the room and emotionally somewhere you couldn't follow. So here's what the file says about the rebound. It isn't a new behavior, it's the same retreat, scaled up to the size of an entire relationship. Every time closeness started asking something real of them, they manufactured distance. The breakup was that pattern reaching its full conclusion. The new person is that same pattern, looking for somewhere quieter to hide. And this is where your mind runs its cruelest argument. It says this time is different because the new person is different, but you already have the footage. You watch this person reach for distance every single time feeling became real. You watch them call absence peace because peace never asked them to explain themselves. The rebound is the widest version of a move you documented from the inside. You're not guessing at who they are. You have the record. Their retreat proves the pattern is intact. It does not prove the new person fixed it. Now the file turns to the comparison, and this is the room where your anxiety built a courtroom. You put yourself on trial against the new person. Are they prettier, funnier, easier, less emotional, less demanding, better in every photo, better in every category? Your panic decides matters at 3 a.m, and the trial is rigged before it begins, because anxiety appoints itself prosecutor. It turns their smile into evidence, their caption into evidence, their silence into evidence. It takes a stranger and forges them into a weapon aimed at you. But the contest you're imagining is not the contest your ex is actually living. Avoidants do compare. That part of your fear is accurate, so I won't pretend otherwise. They simply aren't comparing on the axis you assume. They're not lying awake tallying who has the better face or the better job. They're comparing emotional texture, how exposed they feel, how obligated, how much history is sitting in the room, how much pressure arrives with being truly known. The new person isn't ahead because they're more valuable. They're ahead because they haven't asked for anything real yet. That's the distinction your panic keeps refusing to hold. The contest was never your qualities against theirs. The contest is intimacy against relief. And relief always looks cleaner at the start because relief hasn't been tested by anything. So put down the defense you've been preparing. You were never the defendant in this case. The pattern was. The comparison proves they're avoiding the weight of what you shared. It does not prove they found something better than you. That brings us to the fourth piece of evidence, the one that does the most quiet damage. Why the new thing looks so much easier. You see them light, affectionate, relaxed, posting like someone who finally set down a weight, and the knife slides in clean. See? They're happy. They just weren't happy with me. So you decide the new person must be a softer match, a better fit, proof by their mere existence that you were the difficult one. But hear this without flinching. Easier is not better. Less triggering is not more loving. A connection feels effortless at the start because nothing real has been risked yet. The new person hasn't asked for history, hasn't asked for repair, hasn't needed your ex to stay in the room through conflict, hasn't looked at them and said, I need you to show up differently now. Not someday, not vaguely, now. The new person is still standing at the door you eventually walked through. You reach the room where intimacy stops being a feeling and becomes a responsibility. They're still in the hallway, where the acoustics are lovely and nobody has had to actually live there yet. And there's a reason that hallway feels like home to your ex, a reason that has nothing to do with you and everything to do with arithmetic they learned long before they met you. Somewhere early, an avoidant usually learns a single equation. Low emotional demand equals safety. Needing little kept things calm. Asking for less kept closeness from turning into danger. So the new person doesn't feel safe because they're better than you. They feel safe because they aren't asking yet. The ease isn't a verdict on your depth. It's the temporary comfort of a person who hasn't yet requested emotional presence from someone who spent a lifetime treating presence as a threat. So let's be precise about what the ease proves. Earlier can absolutely look like more compatible. The early days of anything untested run smooth because nothing has been asked to survive yet. The new ease proves the relationship hasn't been tested. It does not prove they discovered something deeper than what they ran from. Here's where the file moves into the part you don't get to witness because you're not in the room for it. You only ever see the highlight reel, the smile, the meal, the caption, the easy pose. But behind the public version, time does what time always does. The blank slate fills in. And the very thing that made the rebound feel safe is the exact thing that makes it feel hollow later. At first, it feels like oxygen. The new person doesn't know too much, doesn't carry the weight of the old relationship, doesn't trigger guilt, because there's no shared history for guilt to fasten onto. For someone who experiences intimacy as exposure, a blank slate feels like freedom. Then novelty stops doing all the work. Then the blankness starts revealing its cost, because the problem with someone who asks nothing of you is that eventually the relationship gives nothing back. Depth doesn't arrive by accident. Depth gets built when two people ask real things of each other and keep showing up to answer. Strip out the asking and you don't reach paradise. You reach a room with very little in it. And the lack leaks in through small moments, the kind too quiet to end anything, which is exactly what makes them dangerous to the rebound. They start telling a story and stop halfway, because the new person doesn't have the context that would make it land. They have a bad day, and nobody reads the temperature the way you did without being asked. They reach for an old joke, and there's no shared language left to catch it. They feel entertained, but not known. They're given calm, but not recognition. The relationship still looks clean in every photo because it hasn't yet had to survive anything. And those moments accumulate underneath the comfort until the comfort itself feels like a thin layer stretched over something that was never filled in. Then intimacy begins asking for something real, and the avoidance old pattern meets a new face, the same walls, the same retreat, the same discovery they were trying to outrun. That ease is not the same as being known, so let's file what that thinning proves, and more importantly, what it doesn't. The rebound thinning proves relief has limits. It does not prove they're ready to repair. A relationship running out of novelty is not the same as a person growing the courage to stay. And now we reach the center of the file, the piece of evidence shame worked hardest to bury. Because if relief is what the new person offered, recognition is what you gave, and they are not the same currency. You remembered details, not just birthdays, the offhand comment from 3 weeks earlier, the thing they were quietly nervous about, the insecurity they tried to laugh off, the day that mattered to them, the one they assumed nobody clocked, the one you clocked anyway. You felt the temperature shift before they said a word. You knew when a message carried distance folded inside it, and because the bond mattered, you spoke to what was happening instead of pretending the cold wasn't there. You tried to repair, You went back to the rupture instead of letting pain harden into silence and calling that silence peace. You were loyal, not in the hollow sense of tolerating anything, but in the deeper sense of holding continuity. Your care had memory. Your warmth kept a record. You were attentive. You were patient, well past the point most people would have left. You stayed present through the difficult parts, instead of disappearing the moment things got heavy. And you were willing to actually know someone, not the polished version, the complicated, defended, frightened version underneath the presentation. None of that was a defect. That was the architecture of real love. But here is the cruel inversion at the heart of avoidant attachment. Up close, those exact qualities felt like pressure. Your memory felt like accountability. Your attentiveness felt like surveillance. Your instinct to repair felt like conflict. Your loyalty felt like a contract. Your warmth felt like a closeness they had never learned how to receive. So they left the room where those qualities lived and walked into one where nobody asked them to become more available than they wanted to be. And at first, that felt like freedom too. Then distance does something to the meaning of everything you gave. The detail you remembered becomes the detail nobody else remembers. The shift you noticed becomes the mood nobody else reads. The repair you reached for becomes the conversation nobody else knows how to begin. The warmth they called too much becomes the absence they feel on a cold night beside someone who keeps things light. This is the line to carry out of this video with you. What overwhelmed them up close becomes what haunts them from a distance. The closeness didn't fail because it was worthless. It frightened them because it was working. Your record in their head proves you left something that can't be fully erased. It does not require you to stand at the door and wait for them to read it. And the lesson buried in all of this isn't that you loved wrong, it's where you aimed it. The over-checking, the self-abandonment, the chasing at 1 a.m. Yes, those drain the life out of you, and they're worth setting down for good. But the answer was never to become colder, lighter, easier, less. The world doesn't need a flatter version of you. It needs a more discerning one. Your task isn't to turn into the new person. It's to stop handing your deepest qualities to someone who only learns their value after losing access to them. The question was never, how do I become less? It's how do I choose someone who doesn't treat more as a threat? Which brings us to the last entry in the file, the silence. No real repair, no meaningful accountability, no explanation that holds the weight of what actually happened. Just absence where language should have been, and the anxious mind reads that silence as the cruelest verdict of them all. I wasn't worth the words. I didn't even earn an explanation. But turn the silence over and read what's written on the back of it. Their moving on isn't a measurement of your worth. It's a confession of their limits. The silence isn't telling you that you were unlovable. It's telling you they couldn't meet what real closeness asked of them, and couldn't stay long enough to say so out loud. And here is where the warning belongs, once, plainly, before we set it down for good. The rebound breaking apart is not proof they're ready for you. A crash doesn't hand you a changed person. It hands you the same person, single again, with the same exit instinct, fully intact, unless they've done genuine work in the meantime. Loneliness is not accountability. Missing you is not the same as building with you. Comparing the new person to you is not the same as being able to love you properly. Write that in the file, then close the page, because the purpose of this video was never to make you wait for the crash. The purpose is to free you from the comparison entirely. You don't need the rebound to thin before your depth becomes real. Your worth was never out for confirmation from the person who avoided it. So let me close the file properly. The bond was real. The closeness happened. The new person did not reach backwards through time and erase the way you loved, the way you showed up, the way you knew them. You weren't wiped out. You were left by someone who reaches for the nearest exit the moment feeling gets loud. And real was never the same as sustainable. They felt you. They may well compare the texture of you to the thinness of a distraction, and still, feeling something was never the same as staying present when intimacy asked for repair, consistency, and courage. Their fear being real didn't make their absence yours to fix. Their nostalgia doesn't become your assignment. So stop competing for someone who only feels safe when closeness costs them nothing. There's no prize for being the most patient, the most forgiving, the most available person in a contest that was never about your worth to begin with. Stop refreshing the page that only ever shows you someone standing earlier in a story you already finished. Stop reading their relief as proof of your failure. If they compare you, let them. If they miss you, let them. If the new thing starts to feel thin, let it. None of that requires you to audition. None of it requires you to shrink. Hold on to the shape of this, because it's the whole case in 3 movements. The new person gave them relief, you gave them recognition, but only repair proves readiness, and repair is the one thing the silence tells you hasn't happened. Relief is loud at the start and quiet at the end. Recognition is quiet at the start and loud at the end. Your avoidant ex chose the thing that felt best, soonest. That's exactly the choice a frightened person makes, and exactly the choice that doesn't hold the way depth holds. You were not replaced by someone better. You were avoided through someone easier. Relief is not depth. Recognition is not repair, and if they cannot repair, if all they can ever offer is the comparison, the nostalgia, the occasional ache of missing what they ran from, then they don't get access to the version of you they already failed to protect. You don't need the rebound to fail in order for your worth to be restored. It was never on trial. You lost a person who was sprinting from their own discomfort, and you happened to be standing closest to the depth they were running from. That's not a verdict on your worth. That's a description of their fear. Case closed. You were not replaced. You were avoided. And there is a difference. I have been the relationship detective, and thank you for watching. If this helped you see things more clearly, please give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. I wish everyone watching all the best, and I hope to see you again in the next one.